What happened to these gay soul artists is just awful. They were icons of soul legends of sound. But behind the fame and flashing lights, these artists were hiding painful secrets that the world refused to see. Being black, gay, and famous wasn't just hard, it was dangerous. Some were silenced by shame, others destroyed by stigma, and a few simply vanished. What really happened to these trailblazing stars? The truth is more heartbreaking than you could ever imagine. Don't scroll past this story. Subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence and join us as we uncover the raw, hidden lives of the gay soul artists history tried to forget. Sylvester James Jr. Better known simply as Sylvester, wasn't just a performer, he was a revolution in sequins. Born in Los Angeles in 1947, he grew up singing in a Pentecostal church where his flamboyant personality quickly clashed with conservative expectations. As a young boy, Sylvester adored gospel music and was especially captivated by Mahalia Jackson. Yet as he embraced his identity as a gay black man who wore makeup and feminine clothing, he was ostracized by both his family and religious community. By his teenage years, Sylvester had left home and found refuge among San Francisco's counterculture. He became part of the avant-garde performance group The Coquettes, and later formed his own drag-tinged group The Disquotes, a crew of trans women drag performers and gender non-conforming friends who defied every societal rule of the time. Sylvester's bold spirit truly exploded into the mainstream in the late 1970s, when disco was at its peak. His 1978 smash hit, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, wasn't just a club anthem, it became a declaration of liberation. With a piercing falsetto, glitter-covered cheekbones, and gowns that shimmered under every spotlight, Sylvester stood tall at a time when being openly gay, especially as a black man, was dangerous. Many record labels tried to downplay his queerness, but he refused to tone it down. He challenged stereotypes on and off stage. While disco's popularity rose, Sylvester broke barriers by demanding control of his image and sound unheard of for an artist like him. Despite his flamboyant persona, he was a savvy businessman and a fierce advocate for authenticity. He was also one of the few major black artists to speak publicly about the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s, urging fans to get educated and demand action. Tragedy struck in 1987 when his long-term partner Rick Cranmer died of AIDS. Sylvester himself was diagnosed shortly after. Rather than retreat, he continued to perform, even as his body weakened, and used his platform to spread awareness and compassion. In one of his final interviews, he said, "I believe love is what matters most, and being real. Always be real." Sylvester died on December 16, 1988, at the age of 41. Though gone too soon, his legacy lives on. Today, his music is still played in clubs around the world, and his image remains iconic in both LGBTQ+ and music history. But beyond the glitter and fame was a man who fought daily to simply be accepted for who he was. He didn't just wear high heels, he walked in them so future generations could run. Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway's voice could stir your soul, but his personal life was a storm of unspoken truths and unbearable weight. Born in Chicago in 1945 and raised by his grandmother in St. Louis, Hathaway's musical brilliance was evident from an early age. A prodigious pianist, he earned a scholarship to Howard University, where he met future collaborator Roberta Flack. By the early 1970s, his classics, A Song for You, This Christmas and Someday We'll All Be Free, weren't just beautifully arranged. They carried a sense of spiritual yearning and emotional depth rarely matched. But behind that velvet voice was a man at war with himself. Donny was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a mental disorder that distorted his perception of reality. He was plagued by auditory hallucinations and delusions, often believing that people were out to harm him, even those closest to him. According to his psychiatrist, Donny believed his daughter Lala Hathaway, who would later become a Grammy-winning singer herself, could see into his soul. He oscillated between moments of intense clarity and devastating episodes of paranoia. His mental illness wasn't helped by the immense pressure of fame or the personal truth he never spoke publicly. Many close to Hathaway believe he was a closeted gay man. In the 1970s, homosexuality in the music industry, especially for black male artists, was a dangerous topic. Being openly gay could destroy careers, cost record deals, and risk physical harm. Whether Hathaway struggled internally with his identity or simply kept it hidden due to societal fear, his silence became part of his burden. Professionally, his career was slowly unraveling. He'd cancel recording sessions, behave erratically in public, and disappear for days. His once strong friendship with Roberta Flack suffered. She later revealed that working with him became emotionally exhausting, though she always acknowledged his genius. The two were supposed to record together in January 1979, but things took a tragic turn. On the night of January 13, 1979, after a dinner at Flack's apartment, Hathaway returned to his room at the Essex House Hotel in New York. That night, he fell from the 15th floor balcony. The room was locked from the inside, and police ruled it a suicide. He was just 33 years old. The pain Hathaway carried, mental, emotional, and possibly sexual in nature, was too much. And while the world continues to celebrate his music, the silence around his personal struggles remains haunting. His song, "Someday We'll All Be Free," has since become an anthem for perseverance and hope, originally penned as a message of encouragement during his darkest moments. How tragically ironic that those same words outlived him. Do you think Donny Hathaway's story would have ended differently if he lived in today's more open and supportive world? Let us know how you feel about his legacy in the comments. The next soul icon was kicked out of his home for wearing makeup and dresses, only to change the sound of American music forever. Can you guess who wore capes, platform heels, and still called himself a real man? Little Richard. Little Richard wasn't just a musician. He was a C. Born R.T. Long T. Good golly D. But behind the eyeliner, flashy suits, and piano acrobatics was a man deeply p Princess Lavon, singing in clubs and surviving by any means necessary. In the early 1950s, he met Escarita, an openly queer performer whose wild style deeply influenced him. Embracing the outrageous became part of his act, but also part of his identity. The original lyrics to Tutti Frutti were shockingly queer. Tutti Frutti, good booty. If it don't fit, don't force it. They were sanitized for radio, but Richard's message was clear to those who looked past the glitter. Yet for all his flamboyance, Little Richard struggled with internalized shame. He regularly flipped between embracing his queerness and denouncing it. In the 1980s, during a religious rebirth, he declared homosexuality to be unnatural and sinful, despite previously admitting to relationships with men. He even told Jet magazine in 2000 that his gay persona had been just an act, contradicting earlier interviews where he claimed, "I've been gay all my life." Fans and critics alike were left confused, some hurt. But others saw in Richard a man tormented by the clash between who he was and what his religion, family, and society expected him to be. In many ways, his life became a public tug-of-war between sin and salvation, rebellion and repentance. Still, his impact cannot be denied. Artists like Prince, David Bowie, and even the Beatles credit him as a primary influence, not just musically, but in how they presented themselves. He redefined what masculinity in music could look like, challenging gender norms decades before mainstream culture caught up. Richard passed away in 2020 at age 87. By then, the world had changed, but the pain he endured to help change it is still worth remembering. Was Little Richard a trailblazer who used queerness as power, or a man trapped between faith and freedom? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Johnny Mathis, with a voice like velvet and a charm that melted hearts. Johnny Mathis became one of the most beloved balladeers in American music history. Born in 1935 in Gilmer, Texas, and raised in San Francisco, Mathis's gift for song was evident from an early age. Trained in classical music, he seamlessly blended jazz, pop, and soul, creating timeless hits like "Chances Are Misty" and "It's Not For Me to Say." Over a career spanning 7 decades, he sold more than 350 million records, placing him among the best-selling artists of all time. But behind the golden voice was a man burdened by secrecy and fear. In 1982, at the height of his career, Mathis quietly came out in an interview with Us magazine saying homosexuality is a way of life that I've grown accustomed to. For the time, this was seismic. Few male entertainers, especially black male singers, had dared to speak openly about being gay. However, the reaction was swift and severe. Mathis began receiving death threats, particularly from conservative regions of the U.S. Concerts were threatened with boycotts, and his safety was at risk. In a move that shocked many U.S. magazines retracted the statement entirely, and Mathis disappeared into silence on the topic for over 30 years. During that time, he continued to record and perform, but avoided discussing his personal life publicly. For many fans, the mystery deepened. Was the original quote true, or had it been a mistake? It wasn't until 2014 that Johnny Mathis addressed the subject again. In a candid interview, he confirmed that he was gay and shared the emotional toll that the initial backlash had taken on him. He admitted that as a young man, the hatred and fear surrounding homosexuality, especially within the black community and the entertainment world, was traumatizing. He revealed that he had wanted to live authentically, but the world wasn't ready. Interestingly, Johnny also shared that he'd received unconditional love from his family. When he was a teenager and rumors about his sexuality started circulating, he confided in his father. His father's response: "Son, I'm your dad. I know these things." That rare moment of acceptance helped give him the quiet confidence to survive in an unwelcoming world. In later years, Mathis found peace. In 2022, at 87 years old, he appeared on CBS Sunday Morning, reflecting on his life without bitterness. "I come from San Francisco," he said with a smile. "It's not unusual to be gay in San Francisco." He praised younger generations for their openness and credited them with helping reshape societal attitudes. How different do you think Johnny Mathis's career would have been if he had come out in today's world? Would the world have embraced him sooner or still turned its back? Share your take below. Frankie Lyman. Before Michael Jackson, before New Edition, there was Frankie Lyman, the pint-sized prodigy with a voice far beyond his years. At just 13, he led the teenagers to a chart-topping success with the 1956 hit Why Do Fools Fall in Love? With a slick pompadour, bright smile, and an electrifying stage presence, Frankie captured America's heart almost overnight. But while the world saw a child star living the dream behind the scenes, Frankie was already unraveling. Born in Harlem in 1942, Frankie was raised in a struggling household during a time when opportunities for young black boys were scarce. He quickly learned how to survive by any means necessary. In a 1967 interview, he claimed that by the age of 10, he was already serving as a child pimp, arranging connections between white men and black sex workers in Harlem. That disturbing revelation painted a much darker picture of his childhood than the public ever imagined. After bursting into fame, Lyman's boyish charm clashed with his complicated behavior. He became known for dating much older women, many well into their 20s, and rumors swirled about his possible bisexuality. In an era where queerness was taboo and criminalized, any whispers about sexuality had to be buried deep. Whether Frankie identified as gay, bisexual, or simply exploratory, he lived in a world that left no room for nuance. By the time he was 15, Frankie was addicted to heroin. Fame had come too fast and without guidance, and the industry that celebrated his success offered little support once the hits stopped coming. He was missing teeth. His once glowing skin deteriorated, and he often wandered into record label offices begging for another chance, relying on faded fame rather than fresh talent. Despite a few attempts to clean up his act, often supported by his loyal road manager Bob Redcross, Frankie couldn't escape the grip of addiction. He married multiple women, some relationships overlapping and legally questionable, which later triggered legal disputes over his estate. By 1968, at just 25 years old, Frankie was found dead in his grandmother's bathroom, needle in his arm. His cause of death, a heroin overdose. He had just completed a rehab program weeks earlier. The tragedy of Frankie Lyman isn't just about drugs, it's about what happens when a gifted child is devoured by fame, exploited by adults, and abandoned when the spotlight fades. His story remains a cautionary tale not only about addiction, but about a society unwilling to protect or understand vulnerable young artists, especially those who may have lived outside the norms of sexuality and race. Do you think the music industry failed Frankie Lyman, or was he a victim of his own fame? Let us know your thoughts and reflections in the comments. Al Jarreau. Al Jarreau was a musical shapeshifter, a jazz virtuoso, pop chart topper, and soul storyteller, whose voice could bend genres with ease. Born in 1940 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he was the fifth of 6 children raised in a deeply religious household. His father was a Seventh-day Adventist minister, and his mother was a church pianist. From an early age, music and faith were woven into his DNA. But as his star rose, whispers of a hidden personal life followed him, casting a long shadow over his glittering achievements. Jarreau didn't break through until his mid-30s, but once he did, he soared. His 1975 breakthrough album, We Got By, led to a meteoric rise, and by the 1980s he was collecting 7 Grammy Awards across jazz, R&B, and pop, an unparalleled feat. Songs like We're in This Love Together Mornin' and his iconic Moonlighting theme made him a household name. His vocal agility, scat singing, whispers, instrument-like phrasing was unmatched. Despite his public warmth, Jarreau was deeply private. Throughout his long career, he never publicly discussed his sexuality, not once. As time passed, curiosity grew. Rumors circulated in fan forums and magazine columns, with some speculating that Jarreau was gay or bisexual. In one online poll, over 60% of respondents guessed he was gay. But none of it was confirmed, and Jarreau never addressed the speculation. His silence became a defining feature of his personal brand, reserved, polished, and untouched by tabloid sensationalism. Why the secrecy? Some point to his devout religious background. Others highlight his ties to spiritual movements like the Church of Religious Science and Scientology, both of which emphasize personal evolution, but often maintain conservative views on sexuality. Jarreau also came of age during a time when being openly gay, especially for black men, could destroy a career. With gospel roots and a clean public image, the cost of honesty may have simply been too high. Still, many believe the pressure of concealment took a toll. While there is no public record of substance abuse or scandal, Jarreau often spoke in interviews about the importance of inner peace, forgiveness, and accepting one's path. His need for spiritual grounding hinted at inner conflict. He passed away in 2017 at age 76, just days after announcing his retirement from touring due to exhaustion. Even in his final performances, his voice was vibrant, his smile unshaken. But what he didn't say, what he never revealed, lingers as a poignant footnote to an otherwise luminous career. Jarreau left us with innovation, elegance, and musical mastery, but he also left behind questions, ones that perhaps only he could answer. Do you think Al Jarreau's legacy would have changed if he had spoken openly about his private life? Would the world have judged or embraced him more? Let us know what you think. Johnny Guitar Watson. If there was ever a man who could make a guitar talk, flirt, and laugh all at once, it was Johnny Guitar Watson. Known for his electrifying performances, flamboyant fashion, and razor-sharp wit, Watson carved out a unique space in soul, blues, and funk that spanned 5 decades. But while his showmanship was loud, colorful, and unapologetically bold, his personal life remained tightly guarded, especially when it came to one lingering question: was Johnny hiding a truth he didn't dare speak? Born in Houston, Texas in 1935, Watson was raised on gospel and blues. As a teenager, he idolized guitarists like Clarence "Gatemouth" Brown and T-Bone Walker. By the early 50s, Watson was on the scene with a fierce sound and an even fiercer look. He gained early recognition with the 1954 hit Space Guitar, a track so ahead of its time it would later be credited as a forerunner to psychedelic rock. But Watson refused to stay in any one lane. In the 1970s, he reinvented himself, ditching the clean-cut bluesman look for wild funk fashions, velvet suits, towering hats, oversized sunglasses, gold chains, and diamond-encrusted teeth. He wasn't just playing music, he was playing a character, often blending humor, sex appeal, and outrageousness in songs like Superman Lover and Ain't That a Bitch. Audiences loved it. But some critics and fans began to speculate, was this hyper-masculine funk persona a smokescreen for something deeper? Despite decades in the spotlight, Watson never married and kept his romantic life virtually invisible. This led to persistent rumors about his sexuality. Some believed his exaggerated womanizing lyrics and on-stage swagger were overcompensation. In a time when being openly gay could mean exile from the music industry, especially as a black male artist, Watson may have chosen silence as his safest option. Others, however, argue he was simply private by nature, fiercely protective of his boundaries in a world that devoured personal details for gossip. Though he never addressed the speculation publicly, it's clear Watson wasn't afraid to bend norms. His androgynous style, playful lyrics, and gender-fluid stage presence subtly challenged stereotypes long before it was trendy or accepted. In many ways, he was queering funk and blues under the radar through performance dress and code. Watson's career remained strong into the 90s, collaborating with artists like Snoop Dogg and Erykah Badu. Tragically, he died on stage in 1996 while performing in Yokohama, Japan at age 61. A dramatic end for a man who lived his entire career like a perfectly orchestrated performance, right down to his last note. Do you think Johnny Guitar Watson used his stage persona to hide a deeper truth, or was it just a creative outlet? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was he an entertainer, an enigma, or maybe both? Billy Stewart. Billy Stewart had a voice like no one else, bold, unpredictable, and bursting with personality. Known for his unique blend of soul R&B and jazzy vocal scatting, Stewart turned every track into a vocal roller coaster. Hits, like I Do Love You Sitting in the Park, and his unforgettable take on Summertime didn't just showcase his range, they proved he was a force of nature. But behind the flamboyant performances and infectious smile was a man grappling with inner battles that fame could never fix. Born in Washington, D.C. in 1937, Stewart grew up in a deeply religious family. He got his musical start in gospel before diving into the world of secular music, quickly becoming known for his piano chops and his astonishing vocal style full of rapid-fire syllables, improvised phrasing, and emotional depth. His approach was different, almost theatrical, and it set him apart from his peers in the 60s soul scene. But as his fame grew, so did the weight of keeping secrets. While Stewart was publicly linked to women whispers, swirled for years that he may have struggled with his sexuality. Friends and industry insiders noted that he often appeared emotionally withdrawn in private, a stark contrast to his stage persona. In a time when even being suspected of being gay could torpedo a black man's career, Stewart remained silent. The pressure to conform to a certain image, a certain narrative, may have contributed to his growing instability. Complicating matters, Stewart began to battle addiction. Reports indicate he struggled with substance abuse and legal troubles throughout the latter part of his short career. The emotional toll of keeping up appearances, along with the challenges of navigating the racially and socially restrictive world of the 1960s music industry, left scars. Still, despite mounting pressure, he continued to record and tour, pouring everything he had into his music. Tragically, his life ended in sudden devastation. On January 17, 1970, just 32 years old, Billy Stewart died in a car accident, along with 3 members of his band. Their vehicle veered off a bridge into a river near Smithfield, North Carolina. It was a horrifying and premature end to a career that had just begun to shine. Though he left behind only a handful of albums, Stewart's influence is far-reaching. Modern artists from Erykah Badu to D'Angelo have cited his originality as an inspiration. Yet his legacy remains largely underappreciated, perhaps because the man behind the music was never fully understood. Do you think Billy Stewart's career would have soared higher if he'd lived in a time when he could have expressed himself freely? Was the world simply not ready for his kind of genius? Share your thoughts below. J.J. Jackson. Most people remember J.J. Jackson for one explosive hit. But It's All Right, released in 1966. The song was an energetic, horn-driven anthem of romantic resilience, and it rocketed up the charts, becoming a signature track of the soul era. With his commanding vocals and sharp delivery, Jackson made a strong impression. But just as quickly as he arrived, he seemed to disappear. Behind that powerful voice was a man who kept the world at a distance, carrying secrets the public never got to hear. Born Jerome Louis J.J. Jackson in 1942 in the Bronx, New York, he got his start not as a performer, but as a songwriter and arranger, penning tracks for artists like the Shangri-Las and the Foundations. When he finally stepped into the spotlight himself, his gritty voice and brassy arrangements caught fire, especially in the UK where But It's All Right became a northern soul staple. Yet while his music was loud, his life was quiet. Jackson was one of the few American soul singers who chose to relocate permanently to London in the late 1960s. Some saw this as a strategic career move, but others speculated it was a way to escape the rigid expectations of American society, especially regarding race and sexuality. Unlike many of his peers, JJ never married, never publicly dated, and never gave much of himself to the media. This silence led to whispers. Though JJ Jackson never publicly came out, many in the industry quietly acknowledged that he may have been gay or bisexual. In the 1960s and 70s, black male artists were often expected to project hypermasculinity to preserve their careers. For Jackson, withdrawing from the U.S. spotlight altogether may have been his way of preserving both his privacy and his dignity. Living abroad gave him room to breathe, but it also distanced him from mainstream success. After his debut album, Jackson released a few more records, but none matched the success of But It's All Right. By the mid-1970s, he'd faded from public view. No dramatic fall, no public scandal, just a slow retreat into obscurity. He continued to work behind the scenes in music production, but never reclaimed the spotlight. For decades, fans wondered what happened to J.J. Jackson. Why had someone so talented vanished? The truth may lie in the pressure of dual identities, to be both a soul man and a secret keeper, a performer and a protector of his truth. Without a space to be both artist and individual, Jackson may have chosen silence over sacrifice. Today, his music endures, but his story remains incomplete, fragmented by rumors, absence, and a lack of recognition. Do you believe J.J. Jackson purposely left the spotlight to protect his true self, or was he simply overlooked by a changing industry? Share your theory below. Jimmy Scott. Jimmy Scott didn't just sing songs, he poured out his soul in every fragile, lingering note. With a voice so high and delicate, it often left listeners stunned. Many first-time fans assumed they were hearing a woman. But that otherworldly sound belonged to a man whose life was marked by loss, misunderstanding, and decades of being forced into the shadows. Born James Victor Scott in Cleveland, Ohio in 1925, Jimmy had a rare genetic condition called Kallman syndrome, which prevented him from going through puberty. As a result, his voice never deepened, and he remained small in stature throughout his life. While his condition gave him a uniquely haunting sound, ethereal, childlike, and profoundly emotional, it also made him the target of ridicule and misunderstanding. Scott rose to early prominence in the 1940s, performing with Lionel Hampton's band. His rendition of Everybody's Somebody's Fool caught attention, but due to contract disputes, he didn't receive credit. This cruel twist of fate set the tone for a career filled with missed opportunities and broken promises. Behind the scenes, Jimmy Scott also lived with the burden of societal rejection. Though he never publicly declared his sexuality, those close to him, and many in the industry, believed he may have been queer or asexual. The speculation was fueled by his gentle demeanor, androgynous voice, and total lack of public romantic entanglements for most of his life. In an era when masculinity was narrowly defined, Scott didn't fit the mold, and it cost him. For years, Scott was denied his rightful place in music. He was often uncredited, had albums shelved, and was pushed out of the industry he helped shape. From the 1950s through the 1980s, he fell into relative obscurity, working odd jobs, nursing homes, hotels, while battling poverty and depression. But in the 1990s, a long overdue revival began. Rediscovered by Lou Reed and supported by artists like Madonna and David Lynch, Jimmy Scott found a new generation of fans. His 1992 album, All the Way, was nominated for a Grammy, and he finally received critical acclaim. Despite declining health, he continued performing into his late 70s, mesmerizing audiences with the same haunting sincerity that had once set him apart. He passed away in 2014 at the age of 88, having lived a life filled with both suffering and grace. While Jimmy Scott never told the world who he was in terms of identity, he told us everything through his music, his longing, his alienation, his hope. Have you ever heard a voice that stopped you in your tracks like Jimmy Scott's? What emotions does his music stir in you? Let us know below. Your perspective helps keep his legacy alive. In the end, the stories of these misunderstood soul legends remind us how deeply racism, homophobia, and mental health stigma once shaped and shattered the lives of Black artists. Many of them died too young, their brilliance dimmed by silence, shame, and societal cruelty. At Legends of Black Excellence, we believe their voices still matter. Their truth deserves to be honored, not hidden. But what do you think? Should these artists have spoken out, or was their silence a form of survival? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about the legacy they left behind.